Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Backshed Bible Study. This is episode number 66. Today is July 19th, 2021. It is my daughter Audrey's birthday today. So she is turning, let's get this right, 8 years old today, which is so fun. But we're not here to talk about Audrey. We are here to welcome a fun family that I have been promising is going to be here with us today. So here are the Mayforths. Welcome
Woo, 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 woo.
to the Mayforth girls. Yeah, minus Perry.
Our main man, he is in Canada right now. And so we are praising God that he's there. He got to go up to see his mom finally. And but it was his priority is to be with her right now. So
absolutely.
But
absolutely.
And things to say.
and we will not tell anyone that I totally asked you to do this very last second. So nobody will know that. And
yeah.
Anyway, but as most of you know that have been following along the last few weeks, we have been having a conversation about education. And this all started several months ago when some people said, hey, we'd love to just help people understand homeschooling a little bit better. And that made me think, well, I send my kids to a Christian school. I would love for people to understand Christian schooling a little bit better, which led me to say, I think it's good to have a conversation about public schooling too. So if you've been joining us the last 2 weeks, we had a homeschooling focus 2 weeks ago. Last week, we had Tim Wong from over at Capital Christian School talking about what it means to have a Christian education in secondary and below. And today we're going through the public school conversation. And I chose the Mayforth family. I did not go to anyone else to talk about this because I immediately looked and I said, here is a family that did public schools right. And it's obvious by how those three girls turned out that something went right in the Mayforth household, and that's why we have brought you all on today. I had the privilege of being youth pastor to I think 2.5 of you, and just watching over the years as God led your family through this phase, and as of a couple of weeks ago, you've brought them all up through and graduated them out. And Michaela, you are officially a high school graduate.
Woo-hoo.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. Heading off to Cal Baptist next year.
Yeah.
All right, and then we have Whitney right over there. Whitney graduated 2 years ago, and you're up at George Fox University, if I get that right, and getting married on August 8th, which also happens to be April's birthday, in case you all didn't know that. So we'll always remember that.
And Cliff's doing the wedding. Yes.
And I get to do the wedding. I got to tell you, Michelle, I had this moment last night where it hit me. There are going to be a whole bunch of pastors in the audience as we're doing this. And I think I'm going to be intimidated. I don't know.
No, not at all. No, it'll be a fun celebration.
It's gonna be amazing. And Whitney, you found a good one in Brett Henkel, and super excited for you guys, but we're not going to get into that. And then Jasmine, you were in a class that I got to see pretty much all the way through high school, and I think you were a freshman when I started at Sunrise, and got to see you through there and graduate. And currently, it is graduated from Azusa Pacific.
Yep.
Did I get it all right?
Good job.
All right, fantastic. So let's lean into this for a second. I'm going to start with you, Michelle. It is really tempting for a lot of us to look and say, especially people like me, I send my kids to a Christian school, but to say, oh, the public schools, that's dangerous territory. You really know what got to know what you're sending your kids off to. Walk us through being a parent, sending your kids to public schools, and what that's been for you.
Well, disclaimer, first of all, that none of us are perfect and that we have not navigated growing our family perfectly. And so, but we are totally happy to share our experiences and some things that we did along the way. I know with Perry and I, it was really important to us that our kids be a light out in the world. And of course, we can all be a light wherever we are, right? And but Perry and I both went through public schools, and also with Perry being a pastor, we just didn't want our kids to feel like everything was church, church, God, God, God. And so because we were already at church like 4 times a week, and so we just
Yeah,
find
Whitney, I noticed that Whitney nodded on that one quite a bit more. But
which
I
enjoyed it. So
No, I love
I don't
that.
know,
Yeah, I
but
was just
so we wanted to find a good balance there too.
I
So
think about that all the time with my own kids, as having them being pastors' kids and sending them to a Christian school, and literally it's 6 days a week where they're in that world. So yeah,
right,
I
you can find people at Christian schools that don't know Jesus either.
sure,
So I mean,
yeah.
and again, like praying through wherever you are in life, I think the prayer is so important of just what is the best fit for your kid. So we, you know, I think, we changed schools here and there through the years because this school wasn't the best fit. So we switched over to this school. So, I mean, there was some of that shifting, and that's totally good and fine. Kids are really resilient to change schools, and even though it can be difficult, but yeah, whatever is best for your kid. And
So I love that, because you take a look at the individual, at your individual kid, and say what's going to be the best. So I want to come back to here, and Michaela, I'm going to go to you first. All right,
Mhm.
you are the most recently graduated, emerging through all of this. And sometimes it's hard when somebody asks you a question like, well, what was your experience like? You don't have anything else to compare it to. So, you haven't had another schooling experience, but why would you say, hey, this was good? I'm really glad my parents sent me to BV, and I'm really glad that I went through this. Or you might say it was awful. Don't ever do it. I don't know. But what was your experience, Michaela?
yeah, I mean, I think it was good going to the public school at least because I think it gave me more a look on our world and what everything looks like rather than just getting the Christian perspective. I think it gives you more of an opportunity to stand out. Um, that when other people are falling in with the crowd, are going to do certain things as a lot of people in public school do, that it gives you the opportunity to show Jesus or to act differently than other people. I think it's nice to see the comparison at least, or to be around those people,
Hmm.
but to be firm in what I believe, I think it teaches you to stand up more for what you believe and sticking with your actions and not falling in with other people's actions.
And any of you can answer this, but were there specific times where you felt like you were really getting pressed against the wall for your faith, or to stand up for something, or where it was tempting to go another direction, but you really had to make a stand? Or are there any things that stand out like that for you?
I think that there were times specifically when it came to like science classes where they'd be talking about, or even history class where they'd be talking about the beginning of Earth in a way that I didn't agree, or macroevolution. And I think that for sure it was at first daunting of being like, oh wait, this is interesting that everybody else believes something that I don't. But I think because it came up in that way and because it so startled me, it was helpful in pushing me to figuring out my own faith. And I think because it wasn't just taught to me in like a Christian school, like figuring that all out, like, having my own apologetics class and stuff, I think that it really pushed me, and watching some of my friends push my friends as well to like every morning to have a quiet time, or to spend the time like getting into the word yourself and like having a Bible study and inviting your non-believer friends and like watching that grow and like even change people's lives, as opposed to like I go to a private school for college, right? And
Well, I love it. All three of you have gone to Christian, or now are going, but Christian schools for college. It's kind of fascinating to me.
well, and that was kind of purposeful because I think in high school and even with some of my other friends too, watching like because we didn't have chapel and we weren't necessarily being spiritually fed through school. It pushed us to do it on our own, which I think set us up so that in college, because I have a lot of friends in college and they're like, oh, it's private school. We learn about God in class and in chapel, but that's really not fulfilling in the way that you would think it is. So it's the most growth I've seen in college and even in high school has been in my own quiet times or in my like in Bible studies that we've started with our own like group of friends. And so I don't know, I think that it was really cool getting the experience in high school of setting those, and you can do that in private school as well. But having kind of the teachers that didn't agree and like the pushing of like this is who I am and this is why, and seeing the opposite of that at school as well. And then in college being able to be like, okay, now that I'm going to learn how to be a nurse, I can learn from a Christian that's been a nurse her whole life, and that's amazing. But I also understand how to interact among non-Christians.
That's so good. I guess I'm tempted to ask this question, and maybe Jasmine, you can try this one for me, but just because we haven't gotten to you yet. But was there ever a time as you were going through, and whether it was elementary to middle school to high school, where you just say, "Ah, I'm just kind of tempted to go off the direction of all my friends or over this other direction," or did you always feel like you were just headed straight towards Jesus, regardless of what the environment was around you?
I think that as I got older in high school, just being in certain like theater crowds and choir crowds,
Those weird kids. I know.
and I'm sure this is the same for sports or academic clubs, but just wanting to fit in. And so being the one who's like, oh, we have to watch our language, or like, we can't tell her this joke or this story because she's like too prudish kind of thing. And so there's that like want still like to fit in and prove yourself that like, oh, you can handle these like worldly jokes, and like, I'm not going to go around telling everyone they're sinning. And so in that sense, I tried to show myself that I was okay and like complacent and like wouldn't preach at them every second. And I think in that I did lose a little bit of like what was fulfilling in my life, which was God. So that was my own journey that I had to take, and realizing that like just the more that I fed into that, the more heavy I felt, and realized that I couldn't control how I was feeling, and I had to rely on God to pull me out of that. So in the end, it brought me closer to Him, even if it did lead me to deviate. But I think with public school, like if I hadn't experienced those things until later, like curiosity is one of my like huge downfalls. That I would have wanted too much to like dive into what I didn't know after high school, or
Sure.
after school. I hadn't experienced that in public school. I like even heard in a podcast the other day that like if kids aren't told about the real world or experience it, that like they might feel their parents are lying to them, or that like the Bible is a lie when it's like all they've been told, and they're hearing these new things later on in life as to earlier.
Well,
So,
and especially when the biblical worldview is the minority out there, in when if you emerge from a fairly sheltered environment, and you walk out into the big bad world, and you realize you're with a group of this many people that believe this way, it can be tempting to just
Yeah.
kind of toss it all away, right?
Like, I don't want to deviate off of our topic too
Feel
much,
free.
but I think, I mean, communication in the family is just so key to wherever your kids are, in whatever phase. And so we started having intentional conversations with our kids at a very young age. And we said, like, this is a house where we can talk about anything and everything. And let's talk about the awkward stuff. And let's talk about, the things that you heard about at school. Come home if they're like making jokes and you're like, I don't get it. Like, what does that mean? And and just really being intentional to ask them questions all the time and asking good questions. And then you don't accept just how was your day at school? Fine. And then they walk off, but like asking those second good questions, and like, so communication, I mean, is just huge.
Well, and Michelle, that was the exact direction I was getting ready to take the conversation. So,
Yeah.
so thank you for taking the hint and taking us there,
Yeah.
because in my eyes, this doesn't work if we send our kids off to a public school just expecting for the public school to take care of them, raise them, educate them, send them off. That and the parent not being involved. So let me push this back to the girls. Like, for you, and you don't have to be specific on this. Please don't be specific on this. But what is the what does the awkward conversation with the parent look like? That you just saw something or heard about something at school, and you go back to mom or dad and say, "Hey, what does this mean?" Like, do you remember experiencing those kinds of conversations with your parents?
I remember experiencing them watching Michaela be the person asking those awkward questions.
And I 100% believe that.
So I think that it was good. I think that we were always just kind of open about whatever. Like, and it wasn't like there was often like a specific thing, because when you're in public school, there's enough kids talking about it that you kind of figure a lot of things out anyways.
Mhm.
Well, and even like if we're talking about like public school being like, oh, you're introduced to so many things versus private school, I have just as many friends in private school that were partying, drinking, sex, drugs. Like, it's not like, I think a lot of it, when we'll point at a kid and say, oh, they went to public school, it screwed them up. A lot of it is what the kid chooses. Like, so like, choosing private versus public education, I think more comes to what you want them to actually learn in the classroom than even influences. Because while it seems more prevalent at a public school, it's just more hidden in a private school a lot of the
Sure.
time.
Well, and often in some of the Christian schools, you end up getting kids there that were kicked out of public schools, and this is the only place
Yeah.
that they could get in, and they brought their stuff with them.
Yeah.
Oh goodness, I had a great question I was going to ask one of you, but I can't remember what it was. So we'll get back to it. Did you have a thought there, Jasmine?
No.
Okay, we'll get back to it. Michaela, you always have something to say.
Yeah, well, something I thought about too was even being around like Christian friends. I think a big thing was about when you're hanging out outside of school, even with Christian or non-Christian friends, about like what you can watch or what you can do, or go off to do. And I think a big part of growing up, like even being in public schools, I still had those boundaries set by my parents, of like, oh, you're not supposed to watch this, or you're not supposed to do this, and I think for a while, like, it's kind of hard being that person when you go and hang out with people who aren't
That was
Christian.
one of the hardest things.
Yeah, that's like hard to
Watching
go over.
movies.
Watching movies of like, they were like, let's watch this, and you're like, oh, I'm not allowed to watch that, and I'm like, well, I can just go in the other room, and they're like, well, we don't want to watch something without you, it's kind of that like, and I think that's good though, that having those boundaries were hard growing up, hanging out with the people who didn't have those boundaries set and being like, that's awkward, I can't. But I think it was nice now of like, they, allowed me to choose what I want to watch, or, as I'm going off to college, like I'm making those choices for myself. And I think slowly the last year they're like letting me make a lot more of those decisions.
Baby steps of letting go.
Which is more than Whitney and I got when we were her age. But
Well, yes, it's Michaela. I was the youngest too, so I understand.
But I think it's nice that now it's like, okay, like I can see where those decisions were coming from, and it's kind of cool now that instead of saying no to things because my parents are telling me, I can say no to things, or I'm all right because of my own beliefs and because I want to say no, rather than just because they want me to say no.
Right. Well, so here's the thought that I recaptured that I wanted to go to with you, because I think this stood out to me in observing the three of your high school experiences. But this was definitely my experience back in high school, back in the heart of the 80s. But I would not have been the same coming out of high school if it wasn't for my friend group. Yeah. So what is that like? I mean, how did that friend group kind of drive your experience going through school? And anybody can answer this one.
As a parent watching it,
Yeah.
it was difficult for the girls. Like, starting in elementary school, like they would be hanging out with this group of kids, and then they'd be like, nah, oh, let's hang out with these kids. Nah, like, so I saw each of them kind of like wander around and really struggle with those friendships. And I know as a parent watching some of the people that they're hanging out with, even in third and fourth grade, I'm like, she is a mean girl. Like, you should not be hanging out with her, and wanting to tell them that. And then again, learning to communicate with my kids better, of they have to figure it out themselves. Or because if I'm just saying like, you can't hang out with her anymore, then they're like, and they want to do what they want to do. But if I had conversations with them about, hey, what does a good friend look like to you? And what does it mean to be a good friend? And so starting those conversations when they were little kids, and they're like, oh, and then they'd be like, hey, wait, she's not a very good friend, and I'd be like, oh, you don't think so?
How did you figure that out?
you
Yeah.
know so having those conversations in that way, where they're processing it instead of me telling them what to think or what to do, and then seeing as they grew up navigate those kind of things, and then I can let you guys put in your own thoughts then.
Well, I think that was an important aspect of going to public school, is that you're going to public school and your family's chosen that for you, you've chosen that, but having a solid church group as well, where like, yes, you're going to public school, and some people got really lucky. I know my fiance Brett, right? He had an amazing group of like running friends, and they were able to like cultivate this really good culture and invite non-Christians in and like build relationships and just really like change lives, as we see in college. But for me, it was difficult finding that solid group of friends. So then I was able to, and while, as you know, there was drama in its own, right? Within,
There always is.
there always
with
is.
church friends, yeah.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
friends.
Church friends are sometimes more drama.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But having some of those friendships that have been solidly built throughout the year, and who I see twice a week at least, right? Having that, and having mentors at church, like leaders, small group leaders, and
Parents
pastors,
pray for that.
to feed you there. You're able to then go to school and be like, okay, this friend group is now choosing drugs or something. I'm going, and that's in the extreme, but it did happen, right? Like, I'm going to now choose to hang out with these people, or and because I have the stableness of my church friends and my church group, it wasn't as difficult to then make new friends at public school, or even to have friends that are gay or choosing something differently, and then be able to, even if say you're not changing them, even to have a friend be like, Whitney, why do Christians hate gay people? And be able to explain, actually, Jesus' whole thing is love. Like,
Right.
And then actually take that to heart, right? So it was cool to be able to be an example of a Christian in that circumstance, because I didn't have to have my soul best friends from high school, like in that situation, which I did eventually find some friends, like Alicia Flood, right?
Who's amazing, right?
Yes.
So how do you walk that line between I'll use this illustration, being a thermostat or being a thermometer, in the one of them determines the environment of a room and the other one just reflects the environment of the room. And do you struggle with, did you struggle with those things, going, I'm somebody that's changing the environment, I'm somebody that's being a light like my parents wanted me to be, versus I walked into this school and it just got me and started taking me a different direction? And this is really for the girls, is how did you walk that? And were there times where you were just it was way easier to just go with the flow than it was to be somebody that was kind of salt and light, as we like to say?
I think just the friend group that I happened upon in elementary school that grew through like middle and high school happened to be like a group of girls who were really kind and accepting, and so they always like would respect it if I said, "Lo, I can't watch this movie." It'd be like, "Okay, like we have to change it," like maybe a little begrudgingly, but they understood, like, "Oh, you're a Christian." They all came to church at least once, even though I didn't push it for more. times or anything like that. But even in high school, they weren't Christian, but they were good kids. They didn't drink or party till college. But yeah, I think that's just how it happened. But learning in like my upperclassmen years that like it was really nice to have solid friends who had similar moral backgrounds, because then you could have someone who you could like lean on. And those ended up being Mormons for me. But yeah, still
nice
great
kids.
friendships. Yeah. And you can talk about God, even though it's a little different, but
A lot of different.
yeah.
No, I had some of those exact same friendships in high school, and I completely understand that experience. So I totally get that. But Michelle, I was going to ask you this. So talk us through for a second, being mom, and you can speak on Perry's behalf too with this. And I know, having been in youth ministry, nothing startles me, right? I've heard it all. I've seen it all. Like it's all real, except for when my kid walks home saying it, then it does startle me. And so what was it like for you as mom, to, if your child encountered something along the way, how was that for you, beyond having great communication with them, but are there points along the way where you're kind of fearing for your kid's life almost, or feeling like, are they going to make it through this?
Yeah.
I do want to say before she starts that I think something that did really help what they hammered growing up for us was that, they would repeat often that there's nothing that you can do that will make me, that will like take away my love for you. Like, I will always love you. You might disappoint me, but I will never like hate you, and I will never like judge, but
No.
yeah, just the idea that no matter what we did, they would always love us. And so we knew no matter how far we went into sin or anything like that they would still love us and help try and bring us back. And so there wasn't like, sure, there was like fear, like as a normal kid, but there wasn't like this huge overwhelming, like my parent will kill me if I do this. Like it was like, they're still going to love me. And I think that was really,
That's huge. That's absolutely huge.
Yeah, I remember a good friend of mine that had kids a little bit older. So like before my kids got into junior high, and more situations and arise that could be a little bit maybe more shocking, or they're exposed to more in junior high. I remember her saying, on the inside, you're like totally freaking out and like, oh my goodness, like you did what, or you heard what, or you read what, you saw what, but on the outside you're like, oh, okay, all right. So I remember thinking of that, like often, to not, in our family, again, we talk a lot about responding versus reacting.
Right.
And so, they know that I'm a mom that takes deep breaths and I'm okay. So, just taking that time to listen and not react and overreact, that, what happened, and just make more drama out of something that could be really little. And then your kid responds off of how you respond. And so then they don't want to talk to you anymore about it, because they're like, oh my goodness, mom just totally freaked out about that. So really trying to stay calm and asking good questions. And even just, I was thinking like overall with the public school, being involved at school as often as you can. Like, I know there's a lot of people that work full time, but trying to get into the classroom with your kids, in elementary school, even every other week, building, so who their teachers are, who the staff is. And so when issues arise over curriculum, or maybe you're like, I don't want them to be in that classroom for that topic, I have a relationship with them now and I can say, hey, I'm going to pull my kid out, and the teacher is like totally understandable, or like I mean, something little like around Halloween, they were making witches, and I'm like, like it's not a huge deal, but I don't really want my kids making witches, And so the teacher was like, oh, that's all right. And she like did a separate
We'll work
scarecrow
with you.
craft for
Yeah.
them. And so it was like just knowing what was going on and then being able to just talk about that. And oh my goodness, the curriculum that's coming up for kids now. I don't know, Perry and I were talking, he's like, maybe we wouldn't have our kids in public schools, in these next 10 years. But again, it's being informed, staying connected with your kids. Yeah, not freaking out.
Well, and that's huge, and I think the message that if there's a singular message that would come out of being here today, it is that first off, the education is of your children is something that you need to pray about together with your spouse and with your kids,
Yeah.
and to be sure that you as parents are completely investing into it and not just, again, like we said at the beginning, sending them away and hoping everything will turn out fine, because that hope will disappoint.
Yeah.
But and I think you all have been great models of that exact thing. And I love that you said not freaking out, right? Not, you might be on the inside, but not freaking out on the outside, and making that an environment where your kids feel comfortable coming back and saying, I saw this today, I interacted with this today, I'm thinking about this in a certain way.
And I know that we tried, or at least I tried to anticipate situations that they might encounter. Like, even like, I remember being very intentional before they went into junior high of like, what are some things that are different about junior high or different about high school?
Yeah.
We need to start having conversations about those things. And so even like, we had the full on sex talk before they even went into fourth grade. Like, some people might think that's really young, but um, praying about it and just the Holy Spirit led, but just thinking, I want them to hear these things from me first,
Right.
rather than getting this information from their friends. And then, again, like the curiosity, like we're all curious. And if we're not talking about it at home, your kids are going to find out about it some other place. And with the
Right.
internet now, I mean, it's scary.
Well,
And
Michelle, you'll appreciate this, but my goal was to be sure I had that conversation before they went to camp, because I did not want them hearing about it in a cabin at camp at night.
yes, because there's conversations everywhere, right? And
Yeah.
so I want my kids to be like, oh, they already got mom and dad's perspective of what we believe is truth on that subject, right? And then being able to continue to have the deeper conversations in those subjects. It's not a one-time conversation about any subject,
It's ongoing.
but that it grows as they grow and we can go deeper. And so, yeah, I don't know where else.
So if you had to do it all over again, Michelle, would you do it all over again? Same way.
Yeah. I mean, of course, there's no regrets. Of course, I think I told the girls this, I wish I was a more fun mom when they were little. Like, and they're like, but you're fun now, mom. I'm like, well, thanks. But I was, I was in my 20s when I had all of these girls. And so I still was, we're all growing, and
Yep.
I had anger issues, and I'm a recovering perfectionist and a recovering people pleaser. And so, wanting my girls to, things to look a certain way and such. And so I didn't play with them as much as I wish I would have. And so, pray with your kids, pray for them, play with your kids, talk with your kids, so those kind of things. It's not, but the whole public school thing, yeah, we had some great experiences with that. So,
Well, and I think, and I know you all need to get moving here, so we're going to wrap it up because we got wedding plans to work on. But the my big takeaway here coming off of this conversation really has to do with a parent being completely involved in their kid's life. If you want it, if going into the public schools is something that you believe God's calling you to do it prayerfully, and you jump in with both feet and you get involved. So that I love how you said that, Michelle, that you are so involved that you have relationships with the teachers, you have relationships with the administration, in such a way that there's a connection there and there's a witness going on. And you're not just expecting your kids to have a witness, but you're responsible for that too. That's a huge part. So in knowing Michelle and Perry, I know that you two are very much that way, and not the kind of laissez-faire. So I'm encouraged, and that's the way. Again, I walk out of it saying, it can be a very good thing if the parents are involved and the kids go in eyes wide open, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Also,
and
academically,
oh, please.
if you're going for a specific major, it is really helpful to have like 20 options for AP classes versus like Victory Christian's like 2.
Oh,
But homeschoolers have more options
Oh,
to
that's
take
helpful.
college
I think
she
courses.
threw down against Victory.
But
Give a victory student another room.
Oh, that's awesome.
a huge difference just for parents who have students in public schools is when they still want the gospel to be told to their children, and for them to understand Christ, is that you're teaching that you are doing all of these things and you're acting differently because you love God, not to earn God's love. And I think that authoritative kind of disciplined manner is what might end up driving the kids a little further into the world when they don't understand why they have these rules, why they have to go to church every week, but that we're doing it because we love Him, not because we feel obligated or forced.
Well, that's really good, Jasmine.
Like you just want to say because I said so, or because this is what we're
Right.
doing. But we read some good books and talked to some great people that, it's like we need to say why. And there were some days I'm like, I don't want to say why. Like I don't want to talk anymore. But seeing how, again, like if you're talking with them when they're 4 about why, and I don't really want to talk about VeggieTales and strawberry shortcake or whatever. But if I'm having those conversations then, and as they grow up, then we're able to communicate when they get into junior high, high school and up. And it's a natural thing to just talk about everything.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
But so good, but so worth it. Yeah.
So good and so worth it. And I think that's the perfect place to wrap it up for today. I'm really grateful. I hope, and I know you, Michelle, you're willing to talk to people that if people have questions, because the idea I'm really putting forth here for a lot of people is know what your options are out there and ask all the questions. And as you're going in, and for a parent who might be watching that is going to have a kindergartner next year and is wondering what's that next step, these are great questions to ask and great people to talk to right here. And you're all still around here. And
thanks for asking. It was very humbling, our privilege.
It's a joy to have you, and it's been a joy to be in ministry with you all. And we're going to take a moment. I'm going to pray as we close and have a couple final thoughts, and then we'll be on our way. But Lord, thank you so much for the Mayforths. And gosh, I still remember Perry calling me at Hume Lake years ago when Jasmine was going to be a wagon train camper. And just seeing them growing into adulthood and seeing how you have taken these girls and grown them up and that they are faithfully following you. I pray that you will just expand their world, expand their ministry. Thank you for the path that you've taken them on. And thank you that we can look and say, hey, public schooling is a great option. And because some parents have done this really well and walked them through this. So I just praise you for what you've done here, and please continue to work there. And I pray for Perry and his time with his mom, and you bring him back safely through this season. And we just thank you for all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, and again, for all of y'all, thank you for joining us today. I want to remind you that we will have a homeschooling forum coming up on the 25th at the church. That's going to be right upstairs in room A201, right after church on Sunday the 25th. If you're interested in the Christian school world, talk to me. I'll tell you what it's like from my perspective, sending kids through there, and talk to the Mayforths. Interested and wondering what's next in your world, and public school might be the option. Great people to give you great feedback. And Whitney, your fiance and his brothers walked through the whole system too, and came out pretty well. So some great resources there in the Hinkle family. If you enjoyed this, share it, comment, like it. Tell your friends about it. We're on YouTube also here, so you can watch back episodes. You can go back on the YouTube channel and for Sunrise Community Church and catch the past episodes. And you can listen to us in podcast format, iTunes, and some of those other ones that are out there. I don't know what they are. Do you listen to podcasts on anything besides iTunes? Spotify. Yeah, we're on Backshed's on Spotify now. Go figure.
Science.
All right.
App.
All right. That's it, everybody. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. God bless you. And next week on the Backshed, it's not happening. I'm going to be on vacation in Colorado. I have nothing pre-recorded, so enjoy a Monday off without me. And we'll see you when I get back from vacation. We'll be back here in the Backshed on the 2nd of August. Bye-bye.